Hello there, welcome back and welcome to part 57 in my build log series of the Trumpeter 1:200 scale model of the Titanic. Today I am finishing off my work on the bridge, so I will be doing the lighting. I'm also going to add a couple of little extra detaily bits that I didn't add in the previous video. I'll stick the thing down and I'll also add some people, so I'll be adding, captain, few officers, maybe a quartermaster in there as well. So that's all coming up in today's video. Without any further ado, let's crack on. As you can see here, I'm just gluing in all the various bits of deck equipment that were mounted on the bridge. Telegraph handles, compasses, wheels, etc, etc. Right, I've now wired my red LED for the port side light into my power supply, as you can see here. And what I'm wanting to do is I want to see if any light is able to bleed backwards into the actual side of the bridge. So you can see when I turn on the supply, red LED turns on and it looks very lovely. As always, the LED appears a lot brighter on the camera than it actually is in real life. You also have to take my word for that, I'm afraid. But unfortunately, as you can see, the interior of the bridge does have a rather reddish glow to it, and I don't really want that. I want the interior of the bridge to not have any light at all. So I'm going to have to come up with some sort of means of blocking that light, and what I think I might do is put a very thin piece of foil on the in the sort of the box where the light sits. If I turn this off, you might have a better view. And everywhere that is currently painted red, I think if I put a layer of foil in there and then poke the LED's wire through that foil, that will probably, and note my use of the word probably, but it might probably solve the problem. So I'll do that, and then I'll try again with the power supply and see if it's made any improvement. So I'm just going to contradict myself here, because after I published my first video on the bridge, I got a very good comment from Atzel's workshop, and they made the point that in 1912, of course, there were no LEDs, and so ships achieved red and green sidelights through using a standard bulb, which would have given you a sort of warmish white kind of colour, and then shining that light through a coloured lens, so a red lens for the port light and a green lens for the starboard light. And so they made the point that it would be a lot more realistic to use a warm white LED on my model and then just paint over the top of it in the appropriate colour. And that, I have to say, is a really, really good idea. So I am going to swap out the LEDs that I was thinking of using, and I will put warm white LEDs on my bridge side lights and then paint over them. So thanks very much, Atzel's Workshop, for that comment. Well, it'll definitely give me a much better result, so thanks very much for posting it and bringing it to my attention. So, as advertised, I have fitted a sheet of foil over the top. And what I'll do is I'll poke the LED wires through the foil, and hopefully that should provide a reasonable barrier. I did the first one off camera because fiddly stuff, and I wanted to do it with my full concentration. I'll do the starboard side now on camera, and hopefully you shall be able to see. Now this was fiddly stuff, I have to say, not least because I really didn't want to have any creases in the foil. Foil's very easy to crease, and once it's creased it's very difficult to smooth out again. So getting these parts cut accurately whilst keeping them very, very flat was pretty tricky. Good afternoon, welcome back, and as you can see, the foil is working, because if we look on the other side, we have a light on, but very little light penetrating through into the bridge. So that is spot on. Basically what I've done, and I'll show you on the green side, the starboard side, it's a bit easier. I put the foil on, and then I've drilled a hole through the foil for the LED's lights to go. And this hole is very, very tight. I've pretty much had to feed the wires through and then pull them through with a pair of tweezers, because otherwise I just can't get them through. But my rationale there was the tighter the better, because the tighter, the less gaps there are in the hole, the less light's going to get through. So what I'm going to do now is I'll drill out the hole on the starboard side, then I will paint these in the correct colour. I need to do a little bit of research to work out how much green paint was used. I'm not sure if all of the box was painted green. As you can see, there's a sort of, I'll zoom in a bit, there's a box which housed the signal light, and I'm not sure whether all of that was painted green or whether it was just a bit. So I'll do some research into some photos and see what I can find. Then I'll install the LEDs, and then we'll get into actually sticking the bridge down. So a little bit of Googling has found a result. This is a photo of Captain Smith on an Olympic-class ship's bridge. I'm not entirely sure which Olympic-class ship. It'll either be Titanic or Olympic, and my assumption would be Olympic, but not entirely sure. But as you can see, the entire of the box was painted in the relevant colour. So that's what I will do on my model. So I've got both LEDs in now. and they are now glued in place. What I've done, I'll try to zoom in. What I've done is I've tried to arrange the LEDs at an angle so that they're sort of pointing out at 45 degrees, and I hope that that gives us a fair sort of idea of a correct sort of orientation of the light, I suppose. Here is the port side as well. So I'm going to just daub these with a little bit of paint, and then I will try it out on the power supply to make sure everything looks hunky-dory. Right, so we've got the port LED in place at the moment, and as I raise the voltage, as we expect, the LED produces a nice reddish glow. We expect these LEDs to work from about 2.7 up to about 3.4, so 2.9 seems to do very nicely. So I'll just test out the starboard and then we'll carry on. And there's the starboard. So clearly I need to do a bit of neatening up of the paint, really just going around with a bit of white paint and neatening up that green box. Same on the other side, and then we're about done. In other news, I have fitted the sort of foldy downy tabley things that were on the sides of the bridge. Thanks John Hollis for reminding me to do those. So they're now fitted. So now it's really just a case of gluing this in place. Now, one of the things that I've been quite careful about is to try to hide the wiring for these lights as best as I can. Because of course I've said it before, but it's one of the slightly frustrating things about modelling. You know, the model is 1 to 200, but physics remains 1 to 1. So these wires are tiny when I'm manipulating them with my fingers, but on the scale of the model, they're huge. So the less you can see these, the better. So what I've done is, clearly I've drilled a hole through the side of the bridge, and then this wire goes through another hole right at the very back of where this will sit. So this wire will pretty much almost immediately go through the floor, and then my intention is to run it underneath the floor where it's much less visible, and I'll bring it up on a hole here. You can see that there's one hole here and there's one hole here. They're not drilled centered to each other, and that's because they are avoiding, I had to drill them to avoid various different surfaces underneath. So there's some wires here, which is why this hole is slightly further back. And what I'm intending to do is I'll just wire these 2 LEDs into another set of 2 LEDs somewhere around here, which I'll use for the lights on the officers' quarters. And that'll give me my 4 LEDs in a chain, pop a resistor in there, Bob's your uncle, there we go. So I'll see if I can get these wires to feed up through these holes, and then we'll see how we can best disguise them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pop a few officers on the bridge, doing various things. So the first one I'm going to do is this chap over here, and he's just going to sort of be walking away as if he's off on his rounds. Then I've got this Captain Smith figure. And if I can get him to stand up. He is going to go on the bridge side like that, staring forward. Then of course we have our quartermaster at the helm. And then I'm going to put two other officers standing quite close to Smith. But slightly lower down. Right, so here we are. Officer at the helm, inside the wheelhouse. One officer just standing next to one of the telegraph handles. And a small cluster around the outer wing of the bridge, with Smith gazing forward. And there we are. And here now with the wheelhouse piece in place on top. There we go. And I am really happy with how this has turned out. So, just to summarise, just the two lights on the bridge, just the port and starboard lights on the sides. Now, a few people might sort of question, why aren't you lighting the interior of the bridge? Well, the reason for that is that the interior of the bridge would not have been lit while the ship was sailing. If you look at any illustrations of Titanic, the bridge is never lit. And the reason for that is because the bridge is absolutely key to seeing forward. This is where the command centre is. And if you've ever been inside a lit house on a winter's night, you'll know that you can't see anything out the windows because the light inside totally obscures anything in the darkness around it. So for that reason, the Titanic's bridge, but no ship's bridge, is ever lit at night because it impairs the officer's ability to see forward. So I'm not doing any lighting on the bridge, and I'm also going to be working quite hard to make sure that any deck lights on the officers' quarters and aft also don't shed any light forward. They'll shed light backwards, but not forward. And that's a challenge that we will take on in the next episode. So there we are, just the two lights. And as I say, in order to make the 4 I need for an LED chain, I'll just use 2 more deck lights and make that up into a 4, nice and easy. So that's it for this episode. I am delighted how this has turned out. As I say, it's a wonderful addition, this 3D printed set. It really is. And I'm really happy how it turned out. I was quite nervous about doing the bridge because I'm just conscious that it's something that I wanted to look really good. And I wanted to do it justice, you know. So I'm very happy with how it turned out. I really like the sort of the officers clustered around Smith looking forward. Maybe it's Light, Oller and Wild in the background, just having a chat about the operations for the day. But I'm really happy with how this has turned out. And of course, the only bit of deck housing left to do now is the officers' quarters and the gymnasium behind. And that's all one piece. So I think we'll leave it there for today. If you have any questions or comments, pop them down below and I'll do my absolute best to get back to you. If you've enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Any suggestions on how this could be improved also, let me know that. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.